we will kick off with apologies. Are there any apologies? None. Conflicts of interest? Any conflicts? Confirmation of minutes. Somebody prepared to move 3.1. Moved Councillor Blakey, seconded. Councillor Williams. Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. 3.2. Any matters arising from the minutes? Appear to be none. I haven't been told of any deputations, presentations, so we go straight into reports. 5.1. Joanne.
Thank you. This report is following a request for further information which was requested at the Council's annual plan meetings to provide some information around rating impacts and potential timing for these projects. At this stage, these two projects haven't been included in the annual plan, and the reasoning for this was to allow Council to consider this against other projects around the district as part of the long-term plan. The rating impacts, if it was to be included next year, are summarised under item 1.2, so 0.5% against the roading rate and 0.1% against the general rate. There's two sets of recommendations that have been provided. The first is to either decline and note that it would be considered as part of the long-term plan, or the alternate is to place a recommendation to Council. I'll just leave it at that and happy to take any questions.
We've got questions. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Joanne. In paragraph 4.2, it says there is current budget, no budget allocated for this project. Could you just clarify? I'm assuming there's no budget.
Yeah, my apologies. That should read, there is currently no budget allocated for this project.
Any further questions? Councillor Williams.
I'd like to move A, D and E.
So you're wanting them in for this year's annual plan consideration. Somebody prepared to second? So the original lapse because of want of a seconder. Councillor Gordon has moved A, B and C, seconded by Councillor Blakey. Mayor?
Look, I'm not opposed to this work being considered, but it's just out of context. We've just been through our annual plan, and I think that to look at this, we need to look at it in its complete picture. So I think that it should come through as further consideration of our long-term plan, but if we want to bring that matter forward, that's a matter we can consider at any time, but I just don't think putting it in right at the moment is the right answer. When we've just been through a holistic process that's looked at our whole budgets, you know, another 805,000 would add a another 0.1% increase, and until we see the complete picture of where we end up, I don't think it's sensible just adding it in. So I think the recommended path is the right one, and if we want to consider it sooner, we can consider that as part of the 2022-23 annual plan.
Councillor Blackie?
Yep, entirely agree. It's all about priority.
Anybody else? Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I'd be opposing that because it's actually the community board that has been talking about this for years and years and years before I've even been on council, wanting particularly past the A&P showgrounds, getting new curb and channeling across there. It's an entrance way to the whole of the town, like every councillor here was normally wanting the entrance ways to the town as a community board recommendation, and so that's why I can't support not going ahead with it. I would have been quite happy with an amendment going just in front of the A&P showgrounds, which was basically half of it, without going down Coldstream Road, but the main thing is to get the image, and Coldstream Road is a, not Coldstream Road, but Ashley Street is a main entrance way to Rangiora, with our the A&P showgrounds there, which is a feature area, and the long grass and everything actually looks really, really bad there. So I think it's an important thing to need to be done.
Anybody else? Well, just briefly myself, I don't see myself so much going against the community board. I've got absolutely no doubt this work will be done, but I do agree with the Mayor as far as priorities are concerned just at the present point, and I'd be very happy to argue that in front of the community board and members of the community. Yeah, it's all about timing with regard to this. There's some areas that I don't know what's going to develop in the future over the road. So yeah, I see putting it off for a discussion in a year and a half's time. I don't see that as particularly biggie. So that's my 2 cents worth. Anybody else? Councillor Doody?
I actually agree with Councillor Williams. That part there, it looks so untidy, and I appreciate that it is quite a substantial amount of money, but in the whole range of the area, I think it's important to continue on with that beautification along that road and down to Coldstream Road. It's important.
Councillor Atkinson?
Yeah, look, I have sympathy with Councillor Williams's view as well. I think that attending shows there and doing the things that you do at the AMP showground, I think it's quite a disgrace that it's in the condition that it's in, and it's not looked after well. And I think that it's absolutely important that all of a sudden, on one particular day of a year, you get thousands of people, and then 6 weeks later you get another thousands of people, and then the rest of the time it sees not many people. But you talk about priorities. I think looking after places that have thousands of people that conglomerate there in a very quick time is actually something that we should take great pride in. And I think that particular area around both of those streets is particularly poorly served.
Any others? Mr Mayor, reply?
Just to say, I don't disagree with the sentiments of the project being done and the work being done, and perhaps there's other ways that this can be considered in the interim. Jared and team can consider, which is including partnering with the AMP around the maintenance of that area and beautifying that, because it is, at times I live in that area too, I see what condition it's in. So maybe that's something our team could be having a conversation with our maintenance contractor about in partnership with the AMP. But everything needs to be considered in context, and that's the thing that really was the bit for me, and it's not against the community board at all. In fact, I'm like Councillor Bryan, I'm really happy to go and have that conversation. If the board submit on that, it's a matter we can consider in the context of that as well. It's not opposed to the board, but it's just everything's about prioritisation and work. So let's see those things come back. But Jared, I would welcome you and Joanne looking at the maintenance along there and whether that can be added in, because a simple mow along there and round the corner and some maintenance would make a big difference in the interim. But let's look at the wider project in the context of other matters that we'd like to see addressed.
I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Want it recorded? Yep. We'll move on to 5.2, Skewbridge.
Hi everyone, my name's Jig for those of you that don't know me. I'm just here to talk about Skewbridge. This report is for information only and it's regarding our project to install active warning signs on Skewbridge. This project is planned to be a bit of a temporary measure while we look at the potential upgrade of Skewbridge in the future. So the project is estimated to cost approximately $285,000, and we've currently got a budget with 51% funding from Waka Kotahi of $330,000. We're planning on proceeding to detailed design after this meeting and engaging with Mainpower directly for the power supply works of the active warning sign and undertaking an open tender for the rest of the civil works associated with the installation. And that's about it. Is there any questions?
Councillor Ward. I'll work around.
Thank you. Just a little query. When you're talking to Mainpower and for the getting the electricity and the done for the lights, would it be prudent to also make sure there's enough there to accommodate for when we do the Skewbridge, the new Skewbridge, any requirements that we might need for the bigger picture, so we only do it once?
It's a good question. I think the only area where we would potentially look to require power on the bridge itself would be if we were actually thinking about putting street lighting over the bridge, or if we were to include some sort of cycle facility and wanted lighting for that. It's certainly something we can just cover off with them and see whether in the future that could be extended if it was required. But I guess as a comparison, the Cones Road, the Ashley River Bridge, we haven't got any street lighting or pedestrian lighting on that at the moment. That one, again, there was provision in the future if we ever got to that point, but it's not a level of service we would currently be looking to provide unless there was a dedicated facility there that required it. But yes, in short, we can just make sure there is the ability to be able to extend that in the future if it was needed.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, this amount is just for active warning signs, is that correct? Can you tell me the difference between the cost of the normal ones you put down, slow down ones and all that with the solar panels there? There's a humongous difference between that and this budget here. What's the big difference?
So this is a little more than just signage. This also includes some thresholds, some changes to the road marking, some tactile indicators to make sure we're trying to keep people in their lanes. So it extends beyond just the signs. The other thing with this one is Jig's been working with the sign supplier, and because of the number of vehicles going through the site in a day, the solar panels wouldn't hold enough charge to keep the signs working, so that's why it requires a permanent power supply, which is more expensive.
Just that they've got these type of signs in the Hunderlees on solar powers, and they seem to act 24 hours, 7 days a week with the battery scenario. So what would be the difference of that? I would imagine there'd be more traffic in the Hunderlees going from Picton to Christchurch both ways than the Skewbridge would have. So I'm a wee bit bemused by needing power, that's all.
I can't comment on how many vehicles go through the Hunterleys. I honestly don't know that figure off the top of my head. But JIG's done a lot of work with the signs supplier, and that's certainly their recommendation, that it is a permanent supply, and that was included in the report.
I can probably add to that a little bit. There are other types of batteries that we could use. There's lithium batteries, for example, the ones that are in electric cars. They generally store more power. There's a wee bit of a downside to them, which is the heat element. So in conditions under 0 degrees Celsius, lithium batteries don't do so well. So they don't retain charge, and so they don't charge themselves in 0 degrees or less, which would make it a bit difficult on frosty mornings if we had one too many frosty mornings and it couldn't charge itself.
I am an electrician and I understand that, but
Yeah.
I was trying to compare with, we could probably get bigger frosts in the Hunterleys compared with in the Skewbridge area. That's just, I was trying to figure out the difference.
Councillor Blakey?
My questions, Jigger, following on from Paul. Two questions. What in your cost of 285, can you tell us what main power's part of supplying permanent power is to that? I don't think that's in the report, or did I miss it? And getting back to the lithium battery thing, okay, if they won't charge below 0, why can't they be insulated? Why can't you have your lithium battery in an insulated box so it doesn't drop below 0?
In terms of the main power element, what we are hoping to do is if they are doing any trenching for the power supply ducts, so that would be the pipe where the lines go through, that would be done underneath the main tender. So their element of it would just be connecting the wires from one point to another through the pipes and just connecting it up. In terms of cost, we have not obtained a cost estimate from Main Power yet. We're still waiting for their feedback to provide that cost, and that'll largely be dependent on the electrical design that they come up with. In terms of the lithium battery, I'm not too sure, so I could go back to the supplier and ask them some of these questions in regards to the battery. Is there something else that we could do? But from what they were telling me, they advised that permanent power supply would probably be the best option in this location.
So what you're saying is that the power's there, they've only really got to hook it up. They're not going to charge us megabucks to run power from Sefton to there like they usually do. So we can assume their bill will be a minor part of the cost. Is that what you're saying?
It depends what you're defining.
There is some trenching required. So what Jig is saying is that's been allowed for as part of the construction contract, because there isn't power right the way through there. So there is a little bit from Mill Road at Ohoka, the Ohoka Road end, to where the signs are located, which is kind of along that straight heading into Skewbridge, and also equivalent at the other end. So there is definitely trenching required to extend the power to that point. So that is part of it, yeah.
Councillor Stewart?
Thank you. You mentioned some sort of laning for cyclists. Is that part of this bit of work, directing cyclists somewhere across Skewbridge? Or is that part of the grander design?
So it's mentioned in the report in terms of the thresholds where the signs are going to go, and just making sure there's space on the shoulder that a cyclist can get through, because we know that cyclists use that route. We see them on Skewbridge, but there won't be a way of providing facilities on the bridge for them as part of this work. So we're just making sure that any infrastructure that does go in doesn't use up that shoulder that's currently there that they do use.
Because I draw your attention to Skewbridge Lane, which goes across, it's on page 26. It's a paper road that goes right across to Lineside Road. And to my mind, if there's a greater design here, you need to get the cyclists off there make good that walking cycling link that goes through, which is, you see on page 26 of the report, where you've got your yellow bit of Skewbridge to the, what's that, north, the lane, the road that goes straight across and links round. That's a lane, which is used by walkers and cyclists, and to my mind needs to be incorporated as an access way as part of the overall design, and certainly acknowledge it in whatever work you're potentially doing with directing cyclists at this early stage.
So I guess the question sort of there is, are you looking at incorporating any of this work to facilitate cyclists using Skewbridge Lane?
So it's, apologies, Skewbridge Lane, I'm struggling to see where it is, but so is that across the river?
I'm assuming it runs along the side of the river.
That's it here. That's across there. That's along the top of the stop there.
This driveway, I think that driveway is Skewbridge Lane. The white line.
Out at the Lineside Road corner.
Along here it comes out.
You can go down Lineside Road or wherever you like to go. There, but it's an existing access that needs to be incorporated, I would suggest, in agreeing the design for getting cyclists potentially through here at some point in time.
I'm thinking this is going to be a project for another time.
I was going to say, I think that's potentially part of the network plan, but then also part of the longer term, what do we want to do with Skewbridge, what facilities do we provide when we replace it, and how that gets incorporated in the wider network picture. Because we've also got the cycleway that pops out from what was the old Island Road down opposite Mill Road, and even with that one, it's how do we connect that in the future through to the Passchendaele Path.
Councillor Doody?
Just two questions, please. Can you just explain, please, the ceramic domes? What are those?
Ceramic domes are, so they have them in certain locations in Christchurch. They are similar to those raised reflective pavers that you see on the roads, but they are just white domes that get stuck on the ground in a similar way. What we expect them to do is when a car drives over them, you generally hear a dut, 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 dut. So it just alerts them, gives them an audio alert that they are crossing over onto the other lane.
Next question, please, is this signage for that slow down one, is that similar to the one you put in Tram Road? Is that similar to that slow down one?
Yes, it is similar. That one is slightly different. That's for the intersection where this will have a curved sign on it.
But it's the same sort of process.
Yep. So as a car's coming up to it, it will activate and it will flash that warning and reminding people to slow down. This is, I guess, two curves where we just continue to have people fall off the road, and I think speed is a part of that.
Well, that I will say that electronic warning sign is excellent. So I'd be all for seeing that happen down there.
I'll test the meeting by moving, assuming there's no further questions, moving A, B, C, D, E to read, after further investigation on batteries, procurement is proposed, etc. Seconded Councillor Williams. Just very, very briefly, this is essential. It's not the work that we want, make no mistake. We all know that around the table. In my pre-briefing with with Jared yesterday, I raised again any possibility that NZTA are going to come to the ball and we can get it done properly. The answer is no, so we have to make it as safe as we possibly can. This is a step along the way of making it as safe as possible as we can, without NZTA in the big scheme, noting that they're still paying 51%. And I picked up the points with regard to batteries. I think there is a wee question there. So I'll throw it in. If it's workable, it's workable. If it's not, you fall back to main power. Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Williams.
No, I fully support this project. I think it's important to be done. Being an electrician, I am concerned. I think the battery option would be a lot cheaper to do because obviously you haven't had a price for main power yet, and I roughly know what that cost would be to go from that side of the bridge, under the bridge, all the way there in a neutral screen cable. I don't know whether there's a transformer there that we don't have to supply a transformer to get 230 volts from the high tension cables as well. I presume there's 230 volts there, but it seems to me that from my knowledge around looking at a lot of these road signs, most of them are battery powered and seem to be lasting no problem at all. The battery situation can be insulated, and I believe the one in the Hunterlees is still running wet cell batteries, and that's been there for years and years and years. And so exploring the battery scenario is, in my books, quite important.
Mr. Mayor.
Just briefly, fully support this. This has been a piece of work we've been considering for some time. Obviously, Skewbridge, having the bridge replaced is our ideal objective, but in the interim, we do need to address the safety issues along this particular corridor. Look, if there's opportunities to save money and a better option with battery, then I'm open-minded to that, and I support the proposed wording because I think it gives that scope. But I thank you to staff for the work that they've done on this, because there'll be a lot of people very appreciative of these warning signs here as an interim step until we get hopefully a bridge replacement, which we haven't given up on. So thank you, Jig and Joanne, for your work on this.
Any further? Councillor Ward.
This is just a question about the Skewbridge and NZTA. Have we, I know there's a lot of accidents that aren't reported that, happen. Have we got the farmers taking photos of any incidents so that we have got a recording of incidents and accidents that aren't necessarily reported through injury, so that we can forward our case for the new bridge?
Yes, and the residents down there are very active in terms of providing us with that information, which is really good because it does help us build a picture. To be honest, we've been very, very lucky that to date the crashes that have occurred have generally been minor and haven't been a serious or fatality. The reality is, I think that's more good luck than good management, and as traffic volumes increase along that corridor, the risk increases. We are going to do some work to look at some risk profiling to see if that can help us forward our case for replacement of the bridge. But unfortunately, the way NZTA or Kotahi funding is set, it often does rely on deaths and serious injuries as the main driver for financial or money going into specific projects. So we just don't have that crash history of serious and fatalities there.
Councillor Atkinson.
Well, look, I just actually have a question if I may, Mr. Chair. Just around the deaths. I know of a young man who spent 14 months in jail after killing his passenger on that bridge. And I know of another death that was also on that bridge. Now, they are some time ago, I'll give you that. But do we not carry those statistics forward? And just supplementary to that question, these signs, I would imagine, when we get it fixed, we'll think positively, are relocatable to somewhere else? Is it?
So yes and yes. Yes, there are fatalities that have happened at that site, but they are beyond 10 years, which is normally the time frame that NZTA use for Kotahi use for assessing. That is part of a project, and yes, we would absolutely be able to use them elsewhere afterwards.
Nothing further. Not going to use my right of reply. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. On to 5.3.
Hi everyone, another report here for you today. This one's in regards to the wastewater treatment plant fencing upgrade contract. This was a contract that was completed some time ago in 2020 during COVID. There was some questions in regards to the contract and how that went, so I thought I'd update you on that contract. So the contract was awarded to Joe Redwood Fencing for the tender price of $62,440. They were programmed to be completed by the 11th of May 2020. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the March lockdown, they actually had quite a few delays, the first being the level 4 lockdown, and then second being a few supply chain delays as a result of the lockdown and shortage of steel for the fencing wire. However, they did manage to complete the works prior to the financial end of the 2020 financial year, so by June 2020. The project overall was completed with $7,700 worth of variations, so very minor, and it's worth noting that the overall project expenditure was below the budget, which was $162,400 overall for all the different sites and locations. Included in here is a couple of the photos of the different sites and the work we did, which was installation of barbed wire on the top and bottom of the existing deer fence. And at the Rangiora Wastewater Treatment Plant, we upgraded the stock fence, the short stock fence, to the higher X fence and installed barbed wire along the top and bottom of that fence, as well as the existing deer fence at the site. Thank you very much.
Have we got questions? No, somebody prepared to move. Councillor Blakey, seconded. Councillor Williams. Councillor
Little
Blakey.
to add. Thank you, Jig. I remember sitting around here when this was first brought to us years ago, and the price was $250,000 to do this, and we all threw up our hands in horror and said to the staff, no, go away and rethink this. So very, very comforted to see it come in at 80. Well done.
Councillor Williams.
No, I think we've got what we've asked for, and it's just basically referring to the community board of what we've done, I think.
Anybody else? No reply, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Go on to 6, which is correspondence, and I have none. Go on to 7.1. Report from Community Board, wanting us to approve
Thank you. I was going to talk to this one on Shane's behalf. So this has been taken to the Woody and Sefton Community Board, and it's a request to install no stopping on Warren Street in Sefton. In Sefton. The carriageway through the area has been sealed adjacent to the new development and curbing channel installed. You'll see from the photos the carriageway is quite constrained when vehicles are parking along next to the curbing channel. At the moment there's construction of houses being undertaken and residents are having issues getting through that area, so we're asking for approval to install some no stopping to help ensure that residents can access through that area. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Joanne. Is recommendation C the updated recommendation? When this came to the Wood End Sefton Community Board, there was some discussion that there hadn't been any consultation with the 4 property owners that will be affected by this, and my recollection is C was altered slightly to provide for some engagement, I think was the word used, before this went further.
Could I just ask, where is C? Oh, B, that's B. I've got B. Not.
It's C on page 69.
Summary.
Yeah, in the actual report, it's A, B and C. So A is receives the report. And then in the, so that was the Wood End Sefton Community Board resolution. So I suspect what's happened when it gets transferred.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so the A has been lost off the recommendation because that was a recommendation to the Utilities and Roading Committee. So that is the reference to B is as per the agenda for the UNR committee. So it does talk to the same point.
So have you got a follow-up question as a result of that?
Yes, I think the C that I was referring to on page 69 must now be B. So my question is, has B been updated following the Wood End Sefton Community Board meeting?
I'm not sure whether you can help me with this one, Adrian, but I don't know whether it will have been within the report. But it does note that we would be talking to the residents before any work was done. So this is for an approval in principle for the installation of the no stopping.
And just, it's probably worth adding, when this came through management team, I spoke specifically to Shane about making sure that we were proactive in doing that prior to the implementation. So you can take it from us that this won't happen before we've had that notification to those residents and given them an opportunity to give feedback.
So, Mr. Mayor, and then Councillor Lee.
Question. So Jared, is it proposing, because I know there was some concern around the hedge, what will happen to the hedge if this is approved?
So nothing at this point. So one of the, we did seek advice from the reserves people, and it's not possible to cut the hedge right back adequately without destroying it. In the longer term, so there would be options such as potentially starting to establish a hedge further back from the boundary and allowing this to be ultimately removed, but that wouldn't be able to happen in time for resolving this issue before residents start moving into these houses and we start to have issues in the street. So that would be more of a long-term option. So certainly if it becomes a problem for residents in the future, there still is a way that the council can address that over time.
So what's the urgency of this being addressed before we undertake that consultation or having it approved? Because would it not just be more sensible for this to lay on the table and await that consultation to occur and then bring that feedback back for resolution? Just posing it as a question.
There aren't a lot of alternative options in this situation. So, and also given that these are just really under construction, often it is better to get on ahead of these things earlier. So there would be some risk in allowing people to establish patterns of parking on the street. At the moment, it's builders on the street, but then that almost starts to set more of an expectation that that'll be available, whereas there's just not physical room on the road to allow on-street parking.
Councillor Williams.
My concern's similar. If the 4 properties didn't want it to happen, would it actually happen or would you come back to us first? because consultation with them doesn't mean we're going
So
to listen to them.
if they didn't want it to happen, we'd try and resolve that with them, and if we couldn't, we'd bring it back to you. Yes.
Cool.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. The Woody and Sefton Community Board were happy with the recommendation. There aren't many alternatives and it is a very narrow road. The 4 houses are either under construction. I'm not sure if anyone has moved into one of them yet or not. It'll be pretty close, so there probably is, as Gerard indicated, a benefit in doing it now before you end up with 4 residents who may have contrary views. My point is really that the B should reflect what the Woody and Sefton Community Board was actually recommending, and my recollection is the word engagement was tossed in. It wasn't saying there had to be a full consultation.
So, I was going to say I'd get you to move something, but you're not actually...
No, I'm not a member.
So thank you for that clarification. And
Yeah. I just wondered, Mr Chair, whether governance could be asked for a copy of the minutes from the Woody and Sefton Community Board, so you pass, hopefully, the recommendation that they were approving.
We'll call for a brief adjournment to find out what those minutes were.
Yeah, well, we've got one more question yet.
Thank you. Just a clarification, please, on this hedge. Which prevailing wind does it stop? Yeah, because if it's south or east, I'd be leaving it there.
We do propose to leave the hedge, and we wouldn't remove it without having given that careful consideration. That's, might be planting a secondary hedge
You did
to
say
try and get
that.
that established prior. So this does not propose to remove that hedge.
No, but just from the point of view of a resident, I'd be very happy to see that there if it stops prevailing winds annoying me.
So, just to move things along here, Councillor Redmond, because I wasn't at that meeting, I can't see a heck of a lot of difference between what's in front of us and the report that went to the community board. So, do you think I would be safe getting a member of the committee to move what is in 7.1 on the order paper for today? Do you think that reflects the community board's intention?
I think it does. At the community board, that B was amended slightly to provide for engagement with the existing owner or owners before the work was carried out. So it's very close, but the wording was altered at that meeting.
We have got an assurance that there will be engagement. So are you prepared to move? Right, so moved, Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Blackie. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I think it's a sensible thing to do, and we have got an insurance here if the people do not want it or going to come back to this committee, so that really covers the other community boards' concerns as well. So,
Councillor Blackie?
The word engagement there is in there under A, so I'm not quite sure what Phil's perturbed about there. We have got subject to engagement in recommendation A.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm reluctant to support this without knowing what the community's opinion is. I don't like removing trees or seeing trees removed, particularly one is with such an established boundary as this here is, and that is the ultimate consequence of this recommendation. So appreciate the words engagement. I don't see there's engagement in the end, so let's see where that comes to, but I take the assurance of Mr Cleary that if there is strong views, that will be brought back. Also, the thing to consider is the sporting groups which use this reserve, which are actually quite substantial, and that's the location, preferred location for the new community facility. So I do have a lot of reservations about this as a consequence of that. I appreciate developments happened along there, and we've been pushed to make sure that this development occurs, but I have a lot of reservations about this direction of travel, and I did express it at the time of management. So be perfectly honest, I'm not in favour of voting for this.
So, just
Perhaps
for
if I could just clarify. Resolution A, as it is in the agenda on your page 4, I believe is as per the community board. So sorry about the confusion. The report itself is the original report that went to the community board. It has been edited. So resolution A, recommendation A says approves in principle the installation of the following non-stopping restriction on Vaughan Street subject to engagement with the residents. So I believe that has captured what was being looked for by the community board. This resolution also would see the retention of the trees. So this is, yes, correct. This is because it does not actually seek approval to remove the trees. It's to put in the no stopping restriction, which will enable the trees to remain. So, yeah.
Apologies, my question
That's
before I had thought that was the ultimate result was the removal of the trees. So if that's not the case, then I'll vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Councillor Redmond.
Yes, just to apologise for the confusion, I was going on the main report. I think your item 7 in the summary agenda reflects what was agreed at the community board meeting, and certainly it does see the retention of the hedge, so it's just the no parking lines.
Any reply?
No, that's what I thought I was moving, with just the no stopping signs in, nothing to do with the hedge.
Very good. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. So we've got a number of matters for information. Has somebody prepared 8.1 through to 8.6? Moved Councillor Blackie, seconded myself. No discussion on the matters. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Go on to 9.1. Roading, Councillor Williams. Would you like me to go through go to Councillor Stewart? I know she's very prepared. We were talking about it earlier.
Flat out.
No. Okay. I think we're going to have an update anyway about service requests following the flooding. There's 500 service requests covering the May, December and February flooding. We've got a new flood team of 2 external people working 4 days a week each to triage these service requests, and Kelly Simpson tells me that he expects about 60 detailed investigations to come out of these 500 service requests, so there's quite a body of work there. A bit of a heads up, we have private property owners on private water supplies along Wood End Rangiora Road whose wells are now reading contamination with arsenic, manganese and iron over the maximum allowable value. They've spoken to some staff and they asked me to ask staff, there's half a dozen of them at the moment wanting to connect in a restricted supply to the council's public supply. I've had a talk with Kelly and urged that when detailed costings are now being worked on, rather than just deal with the half dozen, to extend it wider, because what's happening with these wells, and they point the finger at Ravenswood and the excavations that's happened, they're right next door to Ravenswood. Council staff are looking to see the Ravenswood consent to see whether there is any condition in there that protects the neighbouring private wells. It's sort of ongoing as I speak, but extending the consultation once there's some costings here to go further along Rangiora Wood End Road. If these wells are turning, they're going anoxic, which is low oxygen, and you get the release of arsenic and the other minerals from the rock. If these wells are turning rogue, so will others. People don't know that because they don't test. So I was really keen that, as I said, once there's some costings, that it goes out further than just these half dozen. Rangiora rural drainage issue last week. We had Mountsea Stream, where we've had quite a lot of. Yeah, it was Oxford last week.
No, you said Rangiora.
Did I?
Yeah.
I thought I said. Oh, well, no. Oxford. Sorry, rural drainage issue. Mountsea Stream. It was brought up that neighbours have lost 10 metres out of their paddock. The culvert has been ripped out, and this follows vegetation of about 20 hectares being cleared for forestry up the hill, and this was done last year. The landowner got in touch with ECAN to no real avail, and he's saying now there's 1,500 metres of gravel 6 foot deep in Mountsea Stream as a result of the rain hitting this very steep hillside. The council is responsible, does work in Mountsea Stream itself and drains going into it. So it's been drawn attention to ECAN again, and I've also asked our planners, whether there is any provision for what happens when a landowner takes 50 acres of cover off a steep hillside, and this is what happens down below it. So that's ongoing. Kevin Mertens, who chairs the Oxford Rural Drainage Advisory Group, expressed his disappointment with the fact that we're now, rather than, as you know, SICON now contracts to do the rural drainage areas, and these groups were of farmers who know the areas, as you well would understand, like the back of their hand. Were promised improvements about the way work was programmed, and Kevin told the group last week that he did not see the promised improvement being realised. So I'm just passing that on.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Williams.
In February, the rain event caused a lot of surface flooding and damage to unsealed roads around the district. There are 3 currently graders doing the roads. My big concern was with the roads was at the community board level. It was raised about the gravel roads are quite a pittance around the districts, and this is before the flood arrangement we had there, and that was actually raised before I got a chance to raise it, because that was one of my thoughts I was going to raise at the community board. I've had assurance from Joanne that we've actually got the level of top course on the road, so it just seems to be a maintenance grading scenario, and I'm very concerned because as a councillor on the portfolio of the roading, I've never had so many complaints about the condition of our gravel roads in the district ever, and it's just mounting up, and it's not just coming from the public, it's coming from the community board members as well as a couple of other councillors here that's been bringing on about the roads. So I have got concerns of the level of service we're getting with grading our roads that's happening around the community. So that's just something that's going on, and I think personally needs to be addressed a bit harder than what has been happening. We've got a Butchers Road failed arch culvert. I went down and had it inspected there. The actual culvert is actually still okay. It's to me it looks like the floodwaters has washed away the gravel proceeding to the culvert there, so I don't think it could be called a culvert fail as such. It's the I've actually tried to get down to have a look into it. The culvert's got quite a lot of crud in the bottom of it, which probably has hindered the flow of the water through. So that's a wee bit of a problem in the maintenance game of some of the drains that is actually affecting some of our road work as well. So it's so that's the culvert scenario. The work has been replacing the failed Pip Arch culvert in Taffers Glen Road. That's really about it, apart from the works continuing on the reseal program with approximately 60% done on chip seal sites complete and 80% of the asphalt sites complete.
Thank you. Paul, going straight on to you again.
Yeah, the water and sewerage, we've had a few complaints on the Kaipoi plant with a lot of sludge build up and smells for the neighbourhood. It happened all around the Christmas time. The staff have been very good, putting some chemical around trying to eliminate the smell and what have you, but it's there is a toxic algae in the ponds at the moment, which we're probably going to have to address some here. So hopefully we can get a report one day to see the problems we've going to be faced there. The good thing is this year we haven't had the botulism with the birds this year. I think you can count the number of birds on one hand, so which is a real good advantage in having thousands there that previously happened, which seems a wee bit funny because it's been a hot year compared with other years. Yeah, so that's been pretty good. On the water side, there's a wee bit of concern about the escalating cost, the prices of the materials and getting workers to do it. So, and that's been brought up by all of us pretty much on budgets and what have you, but it seems to be getting out of hand, our cost structure, how to, nothing to do with our council, but it's actual, our contractors and the supply of the goods and bits and pieces seem to be an ongoing problem. So that's about it for me.
All right, thank you. So we'll roll on to myself. So the joint committees meeting in Christchurch on the 4th of April. I haven't got an agenda sent out yet. So that will be a meeting to look forward to. Of particular interest in this portfolio is the inaugural meeting that occurred yesterday of the WDC Solid Waste Services Governance Group. This was chaired by Don Young. Attendees, obviously myself, Greg Slaughter from Waste Management, Yako Clanhams from Waste Management, Craig Downey from Eco Central, Jared, Kitty Moniz, and obviously Don, who was chairing it. So some prep work had gone into it, including a potential draft terms of reference. So it's, in essence, the draft terms of reference is going to be two groups now. After some discussion, it was decided to have a more operational governance group that would meet initially monthly, hopefully extending out to quarterly, and then a more bigger picture governance group that will meet quarterly. As far as the operational side is concerned, I won't be attending. It's not so much day-to-day things, but there's certainly things that Kitty, Jared and Moniz need to deal with as far as waste management is concerned, and they don't need my interference in doing that. It was a very good meeting in discussing ways forward and ways that we can better work together. Some of the big picture, you've heard me discuss better utilisation of levy and what have you, and certainly Craig from Eco Central, he's researching ideas from around the country and from overseas, so potentially, although we're 2/3 through the term, something might come up before the end of the term that I can hang my hat on as far as a big project is concerned. But I was quite excited by that meeting yesterday, and I think it signals a good way forward as far as our council's working relationship. Just a tiny heads up, seeing we're all giving a sort of heads up. COVID and waste, obviously waste being an essential service. It's already been mentioned as far as staff is concerned, but drivers, how are we going to keep our transfer stations open if there is an outbreak? Greg has been looking at these scenarios and trying to predict how he can best keep our service in operation. But as you will anticipate, over the next couple of months, those who are tasked with those jobs are going to be facing some very serious challenges. And I guess you're going to hear about some of those challenges. You're going to get phone calls from people if their bin is not collected on the day it's supposed to be, and some of you will have seen the stuff item in today's newspaper. It's going to be challenging for those who are tasked. They're going to give it their best effort, and I just hope that if you forward any queries through to staff, you appreciate that it's not staff's fault. They're doing the best that they can. So that's my update. So we'll go on to transport. Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask a question on yours? Oh, it's going anyway. I noticed on Sunday there's great big queues of cars at the transfer station. Is there any way we can look at alleviating that, even on existing ones at the moment? I know that we've got spacings and all that drama, but it's an outdoor area, and people are unloading and loading their own stuff.
So Jared had and I don't want to go too much into the operational side of things, but certainly Jared raised a few questions, very good questions yesterday, and these are things that Waste Management have given an undertaking that they're the type of things. Look, Jared had quite a wee list of things, and as I say, I don't want to go into it today because we haven't got answers to all of them. And yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, certainly some of the key issues that have been coming up via members of the public, elected members, we've raised those. Just in terms of the operation at the transfer station, the lanes are open now without the same physical distancing at the refuse pit. So, and I am conscious that we do have long-term upgrades planned for the site, and we really are starting to get to the limits of its capacity. So some of them we can manage through trying to improve the operations on site, but you're quite right to raise these, and these are parts, you have got some funding in the long-term plan to allow for some of those capacity upgrades. But yeah, certainly I see this initiative where we've got that governance group up and going will be a good forum for some of these things to be managed in a much more formal manner, and certainly aware of those issues.
Mr. Mayor.
I've just been a little jubilant over here. Dunedin's just joined Communities for Local Democracy. So it's one of my more interesting presentations I've been through today. But 8-7, Jim? So anyway, so that's a really good result from that perspective. But back to transport. There's a lot been going on at a regional level. There's been discussions happening with Environment Canterbury last week with respect to their position regarding rail and passenger rail. They had a notice of motion that then went through to the Regional Transport Committee. It's fair to say that that matter hadn't been socialised amongst partners prior to that, and so from our perspective where it landed, which was a further report, was the right move, in that we understand where all these pressures are all these work streams are going to come from, because at a Greater Christchurch level we've got the mass rapid transit work underway. There's also then been a request from other councils around passenger transport. So there's just a lot of work streams and ambition around transport that we all share to a degree, but we've just got to be realistic about what can be achieved. I'm not opposed to rail as an option, but all the figures we've seen to date, it just doesn't stack as an option. Further investment in passenger transport and the infrastructure around that may well be the answer. So there's a meeting now being set up with the Minister for the end of March, which we've been invited to be part of, and it's really important as part of that we have a joined up position so that the Minister gets clarity about what is the priority for Canterbury. I've been a bit concerned about where these work streams have been coming from, individual notice of motions that have been coming, which then set us off on a different potentially different work streams. So there is finally, I think, starting to become some realism that we just can't expect all these projects to be achieved. We've got to pick some winners and the ones that we've done some work on and can do some work on to see achieved. And we can't achieve that without actually significant investment from the Crown. As the modelling shown that we just don't have that resource here unless rates go up substantially. So that is taking a lot of our staff time. Joanne, I know, is involved in those, been involved in those conversations, and I've certainly appreciated her wise guidance through that for me as I represent our council in that space, along with Jim's support and knowledge as well. Really pleased, by the way, to see that South Brook's progressing. The working party is now about to go out and get community members and business members involved, and we're talking about the future of South Brook. It's looking like the project for the corner there will be around the lights signalisation would be probably construction in the later part of this year, but there's been a lot of work going to that. I really want to acknowledge the staff who have been doing a lot of planning to make sure that we're in a really good position in that space. Just no Councillor Williams' comments around roading. Can I just really acknowledge the work of our team through these events? I don't think there is a huge amount of work that goes on, and I know Jared, Joanne and others on those weather events with our other staff, Carl and that, are actually really out there trying to make sure that our community is supported as best as it can. Yes, the wet event has brought about a lot of potholes and certainly issues in our roads, no two ways about it. But that's not through a lack of commitment from our team, who I think are doing an absolutely outstanding job trying to keep, support our community through a pretty tough time. And these weather events do represent a big challenge. So plus the contractors that were out there, there's been a lot of work going to that, and we're going to have a further workshop around some of those other challenges. But I'd like to place on record my thanks to Jared, Joanne and the team for their work in that space. I'm really proud of the work that you do, and thanks for all that. In difficult times during weekends and other things, we're all being stood up and out there just making sure that we're responding as we need to. So thank you for all that work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've no questions. I have no urgent general business. So I'll move from the chair that we go into public excluded. Are these meetings live streamed? They are. So it's seconded Councillor Blackie, and we'll just wait for that. I'll put it all those in favour, please say aye first. Aye. Against? Carried. And we'll just pause.